mean, a lot of times outside of just wanting to become a professional critic, a lot of people really stumble across like, how do I actually get to watch movies before they actually hit theaters? And I want to know, like, what has that experience been like actually being able to get on the press list, to attend screenings, for having a self-published site, but also to as a freelancer, what does that process look like for you?
There's levels. So it's different if you live in a major city, and it's different if you don't live in a major city. It's also different if you are working for a self-publishing site versus if you are just a freelancer or working for anything that is established. So with regards to location, in my experience, when I was starting out, I lived in Sacramento, which is not New York or LA, which pre-pandemic meant that it was relatively, I would say, easier because you had one company that you had to get in their good graces. And so I could not do that on my own. It was not until that I was brought on to a site that had relatively high traffic. That person emailed the rep for the company that ran most of the screenings in Sacramento, and they got me in. And once I left that site, they never updated their stuff. So it worked out that I was able to get in from there. When I moved to Los Angeles, it was completely different because there is no unified central company that handles all the screenings. You're dealing with individual studios and individual reps within those studios that may be handling certain movies. So I had to rely a lot on Twitter at that point, asking fellow critics, hey, do you know who's handling this movie? You go into Facebook groups of critics organizations that I was a part of. And then from there, it became, what is your outlet? Because in my experience, once I got here, it was often depending on what I was doing, so I could email a rep and be like, hey, I don't have an assignment, but I'm trying to think about this for feature consideration as a freelancer. So I need to be able to see it. And that most of the time would get me in. Depending on if it was for a trade and I needed to see it really early, like long leads, I kind of had to use the outlet. But most of the time, and I can still do this now, is kind of be like, hey, I'm looking at this for consideration, or I'm a member of a critics organization that votes. And, I'd like to be sure that I can see this. So there's a bit more flexibility if you live in a big city to be like, just because I don't have a piece or I'm not at a big outlet, you're not automatically X'd out. Whereas if you live in a smaller city, you're usually working at the mercy of one company that's going to determine how important your outlet is.
I mean, Eric, for you, how does this differ with the process since you cover awards? Do you tend to go to screenings year round, or is it just more so during Oscar season or award season that you actually start attending screenings?
Well, I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, so the group that Kristen was talking about when she was in Sacramento is the same group that I deal with up here, which is pretty much nationwide if you aren't New York and LA. So that was my beginning, and that's all of my press screenings, and that just is the normal press screenings that everybody else gets. And award screenings become a little different. The access is a little different. It's a little quicker. But yeah, Kristen was really right. If you are not in a major city, it's extremely difficult. I imagine for anybody that is, watching or listening to this and they live in, the Midwest or, whatever, Nebraska or something, and they're like, how in the world do I possibly, break into something like this? Because we don't all live on the coast or in a city, even if we eventually get there. And I think it's very difficult, but if you have passion and ambition, I would always recommend reaching out to a mutual or a contact in order to help kickstart that. I have several writers that live across the country and would never have the access that a San Francisco, a Los Angeles, or a New York person would have ever. So they're really dependent on that. And I think if we have the ability to give that access, it's a great thing to do. We're helping create the new generation of writers and critics and people with voices.
And also to just my own personal experience, before I was actually on a press list, I would just go stand in line 3 to 4 hours. I know this is not as glamorous as it may seem, but there's advanced screenings, so there's free screenings available to the public before movies come out. Not for every single title, but depending on what area you live in, there's screenings that are happening. And you get tickets, do contest giveaways. I would go to radio websites or go to other bigger sites who are doing ticket giveaways, and I would just stand in line with my food and a chair and just wait and pray that I can actually make it into the screening. So there's a way you can make a way out of no way without.
Yeah, and if you do that and you see something ahead of the majority of the general public, and you whatever, if it's a blog or a Substack or whatever it is that you have, if you get some words out before general public does, people will take notice. People will see that.
I will say also that this has been very film focused that we've talked about. I mean, TV also gives you screeners. That is a manner of Googling. Pretty much every streamer, every network has a press website for which you can register, and you can find press contacts, and you can reach out to those for screeners of TV shows. Often Netflix also will give screeners of movies. I think absolutely there has been post-COVID, although we're still in COVID, I refer to it as post the great expansion, there has been more of a crackdown on like the hierarchical nature of, if you're not in New York or LA, it's going to be more difficult for you to get access to movies. But I will say that I think if you are interested in TV criticism, I think that there is some more flexibility there in terms of gaining access. So that's also something to consider, is that Google is your friend.